start recording. Okay, we are recording. Okay, Cubelet. Man, Cubelets, am I right? Oh boy.
Hello and welcome to Gutshot, home of the hottest takes in Magic the Gathering. I am Fred, aka War Crimes Uwu, and joining me as always is my gorgeous host, Will, aka Aggressive Rhetoric.
Yes, Gutshot, the only Magic podcast legally recognized by the state of California to cause completion. And welcome to Gutshot. We're finally here talking about one of our favorite things ever, at least one of my favorite things ever.
One of my favorite things ever as well. A very, very fun way to play Magic that some people love, some people hate. We're talking about Cubelet.
Yes, Cubelet. Actually, before we get there, I do want to talk to you about something very, very important. I know that we said that we wanted to kind of shy away from doing news of the week stuff for Magic the Gathering, but I feel like we really need to talk about this. So are you aware of the Arena Open events that they do on Magic Arena every now and then, those super high cost, high competitive events they do on Arena?
Yes, I am.
Okay, did you hear that the upcoming one, so I think from date of recording would be about a week and a half from now, is actually going to be sealed?
I did not know that. That's really interesting. I actually think I'm going to play in that then.
Yeah,
because I have been eating Kaldheim Limited for breakfast.
Yeah, I actually think I'm going to do it too. I actually have a lot more sealed experience than I do drafting, and that's for just any set. I feel like that's where my limited skill set really shines. And I'm thinking, not that I'm super well versed in Kaldheim, but I'm thinking if it's sealed, I'm willing to put down some gems and try it out. So
Absolutely. You want to put our brains together to build our decks?
Oh yeah, dueling by committee. I saw that episode of Yu-Gi-Oh. I thought that's a very formative memory for me.
I just meant for building, so we can make sure we're looking at it well and building the best possible deck for. I'm assuming it's like best of three, like very serious sealed.
I know. I actually think there are two queues. You can do best of three for day one. You can do best of three or best of one. And okay. I think I would probably do best of one just because.
Yeah, I think I would too.
Yeah, that's kind of what I've done. And I don't know exactly when you would get this, but apparently you can get that super sweet Phyrexian style Vorinclex card style. So I gotta get that.
That is pretty sweet. There was a Magic the Gathering Facebook group where people were telling each other with straight faces that was in Hebrew and Arabic.
Oh. Okay.
But yeah, the Phyrexian Vorinclex does look sweet. I wish it were in real life that you got it as a prize because it is worth like $80 for some reason.
Yeah, no, I totally understand.
Yeah, I pulled the showcase from my pre-release kit, but not the Phyrexian one. But yeah, I would absolutely love to play in that. That's pretty exciting. So yeah, any listeners who are into Kaldheim sealed, because I've been taking Kaldheim Limited for a ride in the Wind Wagon.
Oh yeah. So I actually don't know if we would be technically breaking the rules by comparing decks and doing sealed deck building together.
Okay, well let's find out if we're allowed to do that or not, and then do it if we're allowed.
I'm sure it's like they can't tell you not. So maybe we'll have to do that. But if that is actually a crime, we didn't say that, and this is a parody podcast.
Right, yeah. If we're not allowed to do it, we're not doing it.
The last thing I'm going to do is admit to a crime on a podcast. I ain't doing it.
Right. I'm not Shane Dawson.
For sure, for sure. But yes, like you said, we're talking about Cubelet today, something that's near and dear to my heart, and I know to yours as well. But before we get there, we haven't really mentioned this much, but I wanted to take a time, to mention this. But a while back, we kind of, not really a relaunch, but we kind of redoubled our efforts on the Gutshot program and wanting to get this out, tweaking it into something that both of us could be excited and proud of.
Yeah,
And
sort of season 2.
yeah, yeah, you could definitely say it like that. But one of the things that we're doing is that we're really focusing on YouTube this time. The audio of this still goes on the podcast feed. So we love our listeners there, but there's a whole video component to this on YouTube. So I gotta do all the YouTube stuff. You know how it is. I don't make the rules. This is how this is. So if you're watching us on YouTube, we'd really appreciate it if you would hit the subscribe button. That's what I keep looking for. Like when we get like one new subscriber, I lose it and I just feel like I'm walking on air the rest of the day. That's the best feeling. So like the video. If you want, please subscribe. It would make our day. I personally don't ever hit the bell icon on YouTube. Maybe I shouldn't be saying that, but I don't ever do it because I'm not really a huge fan of notifications. But if you're the kind of person that doesn't mind getting notifications from Chrome and you want to be notified when we put out a new episode, please hit that bell icon. It would really mean a lot to us, if you wanted to help, stay on top of our content. And we don't care what you have to say. Call us, call us slurs. Do whatever you want. Tell us how we really need to stop making a podcast. Whatever you have to say. If you would just leave a comment and just tell us your real thoughts about what we're doing, that would mean the world to us. So, like, subscribe, hit the bell, comment. If you're watching on, or if you're listening to us on, podcast, just keep vibing the way you are, but that would really help us, so just consider it.
One thing that's really important to our engagement, if you could actually go through to all of the other channels that you're subscribed to and unsubscribe from them, and dislike any videos of theirs that show up in your feed, that will help your feed become just Gutshot.
Oh yes.
So we would really like that if you would do that as well.
Right. I will not stab you if you stay subscribed to Stevensville Gamers or Disc Dandies. I think those will be fine. But anyway, we're talking about Cubelet today. Fred, are you excited for this one?
I'm incredibly excited for this one. Why don't you go through and explain what Cubelet is? We've kept the people waiting enough.
Okay. Yeah, we've definitely wound up enough. All right, so what is Cubelet? Cubelet is a special format of playing Magic the Gathering with 2 or more people. And the idea is that you're not bringing your own deck to the table. You and all of your opponents are playing off the same deck, typically a 100 card pre-built shared deck. Now that's my land. Okay. Now this design deck will look different than a normal Magic deck. It will have no lands in it. When you're playing, you're not actually going to be playing land cards. Is
there one Korean Spirit Guide and one Elvish Spirit Guide for you and your opponent to share?
You could if you wanted to, and we'll get to how you could make Cubelet your own further in the episode. But okay, so it's a 100 card pre-built shared deck, and there are no lands. When you and your opponent sit down, and from now on I'm gonna talk as though it's only 2 players. You're going to shuffle the 100 card deck, and you're going to deal a hand to yourself and a hand to your opponent. So you're going to be playing like a normal deck of cards. You each draw a hand, and when in the normal course of playing, when you draw a card, you're going to draw from the shared deck. So you're both drawing all your cards from there. The deck has, all sorts of colors in it. It's going to run the gambit of stuff that's in Magic, other than the lands. Now, how are you actually going to play your spells? It is your turn, you can choose any card in your hand to play face down as a land that taps for any color mana. I think that some Magic formats might actually have a name for what that card, like a rainbow land or something like that.
Mhm.
I don't know of any name you would call that in Cubelet. It's just a land that you play face down, but you can choose any card to play face down. Now that has interesting strategic implications, because your hand's going to run the gambit between aggressive cards, mid-range cards, cards that are really good, that are almost bomb level, or cards that are really just role players that don't play a role in your current strategy. So part of the fun of this is crafting your hand via your land drops to enact the game plan that you think is most powerful out of the cards that you've drawn, and your opponent's going to be doing the same thing. So that's another layer of the fun that you get from Cubelet.
Yeah, I agree. I think you can be putting down your aggressive cards to play your control cards, or vice versa if the cubelet is designed well. And it really asks a lot of you, but also the cards that you're drawing are random. You're going to try to be making the best of them later in the game. So it's definitely a very strategic format.
Yeah, and all the cards, other than the rules that I just laid out, you're just playing a normal game of Magic.
Correct.
You have a 7 card hand. You're drawing 1 card per turn. You are just playing the cards as they are written. It's not like Mental Magic where they can be other cards or they do different things. You're just playing Magic with the cards that you've drawn, other than you have to, you're sharing the deck and you're playing those lands. So I want to give credit where credit is due. I got this idea from Alex Stacey of Loading Ready Run on their Tap Tap Concede podcast back in 2014. They had an entire episode devoted to Alex explaining what he built. So the Cubelet name comes from him, and once we kind of go through my list here in a bit, it actually mirrors quite a bit what Alex originally came up with. The more that I've played the Cubelet, the more that I've realized that he really kind of knew what he was doing when he put
Yeah.
it together. But I've also made a lot of changes of my own, for my own, ways of playing and stuff like that. So props to him for coming up with something really great. And I think that he said on the podcast that this is really close to a lot of other Magic variants, like Wizard's Tower or Type 4, that vary from it very slightly. So if what we're saying sounds familiar, there's probably already a Magic variant that's very close to this, but isn't exactly this. Like I know that there's a format where it's you draw random cards and you play the cards as is, but you don't play lands. You just get mana to play. Like you get 5 mana per turn or something
Yeah.
like that. That might be Wizard's Tower, and there's a couple others. I remember back in the day, years ago, when I would usually go to Modern, and you and I would play Cubelet together, and the very entrenched competitive Modern players would come up to us and ask us what we were doing, and we would explain what Cubelet was, and the response that we would most always get would be like, "Oh, is that like Type 4, or is that is that like Wizard's Tower?" Or something like
Well, I
that.
think the response we would most often get was just like a snide look.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, which is weird because we're entrenched modern players. We just also enjoy fun.
Yeah, exactly. And they could see the cards we were playing when we go through my list. You'll see what type of cards we were playing with, which I think would appeal to modern players. But
Right.
yeah, so this is pretty close to some other variants, but it's its own special thing, and I think that it kind of vaults it up to another tier. And real quick before we move on, I want to just highlight that the I'm going to highlight two things. There is a website that focuses on Cubelet that you can peruse. It's mtgcubelet.com. It's a pretty okay website. It pretty much explains all the stuff that I've explained here.
Mhm.
Gives Alex Stacey credit for the creation of the format. And for a while they were doing set reviews for Cubelet, how these cards could fit into the Cubelet format. So that's there for you to look at. I mostly agree with everything that's on that website. They do have a few weird ideas on Cubelet creation philosophy that I don't really agree with all that well, but that is there. If you're
Yeah.
more interested, you could look at that website. And one more
Um,
thing I want to highlight real quick is that the Mastermind format that you may have seen on Arena is like a souped up super form of Cubelet. Instead you discard the card and you get a land token that taps. But if this sounds like something that you remember from Arena Mastermind format is pretty much Cubelet. So that's my diatribe. That is what Cubelet is.
Yeah, PSA in terms of cards from new sets going in your cubelet. Maybe don't put Foretell in there.
Yeah. There's, that's one thing we'll talk about later is that the Cubelet format actually makes a couple of kinds of cards a little awkward.
Yeah.
We'll talk about flashback later. I don't think it's in the list, but morph is something that you'd probably want to be wary about having in your cubelet for obvious reasons. You're not going to be able to tell your morph cards away from your lands, but that is what Cubelet is. And just to give you all an idea of what a Cubelet could look like, I wanted to highlight my list, for example. So right here, we're looking at the white cards. And this, I think that this is a pretty good list of just, kind of legacy cube level playable white cards that people would be excited to play with.
Okay. Yeah. I think this cubelet really has the modern player's touch. A lot of these are cards that modern players would know. Your cubelet's going to speak to the time that you were most into Magic, in terms of what cards go in it, just like any cube would, and I think that's good. But yeah, this is definitely a modern player's cubelet, looking at cards like Wall of Omens and Flicker Wisp and Path to Exile and Day of Judgment and O-Ring.
Oh yeah, for sure. And then kind of those fun cards like Porcelain Legionnaire. I think that's a card that really speaks to me as a player, as someone who has played a lot of Phyrexian, as someone who likes aggressive weenie strategies. That's a pretty good one. A Flicker Wisp. I've had some good memories of that card. But yeah, we move on to blue. I mean, you have Delver of Secrets, Counterspell, Mold Drifter, which is a very good card. A Frantic Search, Mana Leak. This is like
Looter Ilkor.
Yeah, for sure. This is just a smattering of just those mid-level role player cube cards, and then some fun cards. We got Fog Bank and Invisible Stalker. Those types of cards, so there's room for fun while also highlighting kind of the famous cards of Magic. And but your cubelet doesn't have to be this way. You can do it a number of different ways. Let's move on to black. Hypnotic Spectre. That's the classic card for me personally. But you also get other things like a Liliana Spectre, Stab Wound, Infest, Carrion Feeder, which actually Carrion Feeder is a lot stronger than it looks in this format, as well as Nantuko Shade, a card that is not very good these days, but used to be a powerhouse and can still be a powerhouse here in this cubelet.
Yeah, playing this cubelet, you don't have to show up to Modern with Ponza to get a Stab Wound.
Yeah, move on to red. Flame Tongue Kavu, Siege Gang Commander, Hellspark Elemental. That's a nod to just my own way of wanting to play Magic. Goblin Bushwhacker. That's definitely because this is mine. Bushwhacker is going to be in there. And then, going to green, you got Thraggy, you got the Swag Tusk, Ambush Viper, Experiment one, Rancor. Man, that one is, very, very much a part of my soul. And then you go on to multicolor, and then that's where a lot of the power of this cube comes from, because you can play lots of gold cards. Mana colors are not really going to
They're
matter
not any
too
harder
much.
than real cards are to play,
Right, for
or
sure.
regular cards.
Yeah, for sure. You get real cards like Sorceress Charm, Kasali Pride Mage, Murderous Redcap, but you also get like Blightning, which is a good card. Unflinching Courage, Armadillo Cloak, Gorp Clan Rampager, which is a good card, but is also one near and dear to my heart. Frostburn Weird, Mystic Snake. That's a card that no one would ever play anymore, but it gets to shine here. And then figure.
Will's really showing his bias here because there's no Cascade cards.
Yeah, no Cascade cards. Although that would be fun. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But like, if you wanted to build a cubelet that kind of focused on Cascade, I think there would be room for fun there. And then of course, Figure of Destiny down at the bottom, which is kind of on the top of my list for a card that might be too powerful for this cube, but it is there. So this is what one cube could look like if you wanted to focus on like well-known, powerful, and fun cards. You could put any cards you wanted in here to create any experience you wanted, but this is what my cubelet looks like. And you've had a lot of fun playing this, haven't you, Fred?
I certainly have, yes. Some fun stories. Will put in, I feel like we've told this story on the podcast before, but Will used to have the Full Art Giant Growth textless promo in his cubelet, and we played it with my younger brother, not Cornelius, another one who we will call Beauregard. And he lifted up the Texas promo, and Will put it in there thinking, look, everyone knows what Giant Growth does. It's such a ubiquitous Magic card. It's like one of the most well-known ones. And Beauregard lifted it up and was like, what does Giant Growth do? And Will laughed.
Yeah, that's a great story. Love Beauregard.
Yeah, quality brother. But yeah, we have countless fun stories from Cubelet, trying it different ways. Do you share a graveyard? Do you not? But here is why you should play Cubelet.
Yeah. So I just want to ask you off the bat, Frederick, what is your most favorite thing about Cubelet? What do you think makes Cubelet like the number one reason that someone ought to sit down and try it the next time they play Magic in person with another person?
It is low pressure. We can do it between intense rounds of Modern, where I'm kind of, those games where your fingers get cold because all your blood's rushing to your brain.
Oh yeah.
You can have a Cubelet in between those rounds as just sort of a palate cleanser, and sometimes you win because you were really tactical and answered their threats really efficiently and put exactly the right cards face down. And sometimes you lose because your opponent got to resto a Thragtusk or whatever, but nothing's on the line, so it's okay to have some losses to random stuff. And it's kind of just fun to watch whatever strategy your opponent found play out, even if you're going to take the L. So it's just a very casual, fun format, which is usually in order for a format to be casual and fun, usually I hate it. I hate Commander. I think it's like the Mario Party of Magic. But Cubelet just has that vibe, and maybe it's the person that I've gotten to play it with. Maybe it's the cards that have been chosen for the Cubelet, but it's casual and fun, but I still enjoy it.
Yeah, that's a great point. And that's kind of why I started just carrying my Cubelet everywhere I go. It is if you want to play Magic in between rounds and stuff like that. Yeah, it's low pressure. I don't feel any I don't feel bad at all just being like, oh, round starting, let's scoop it up, put it all back together. It's low investment, but it's also low investment with my Cubelet in particular. It's low investment while still playing interesting cards that people want to play. People want to play Counterspell or Mana Leak. They want to try to hit the opponent with a Hypnotic Spectre. They want to put an Armadillo Cloak on an invisible Stalker.
Let me be clear. I don't want you to do that.
Yeah, I want to. My opponents don't want to. So yeah, I think that's a really great point. For me, I really love just the convenience of the pre-packaged MTG gameplay. it's just one stack of 100 cards, and multiple people get to sit down and quickly play a game of Magic. They don't have to pull out the Ultra Pro Satin Towers of Commander cards and pull out all their tokens or anything. It's just like, hey, you want to play? Yeah, absolutely. And just shuffle the one deck. It's great for playing with people who know Magic but don't play all the time, and you're going to run into. So it's like if I go over to like a friend's house, I know that they play Magic, instead of like trying to figure out what format we're going to play or anything like that. It's just like, I'll just bring my Cubelet over. It'll be real quick. So Cubelet kind of gets as close as Magic I feel possibly can be to being a shelf stable board game that you can like pull off your shelf and just play. It's just very contained, very its own thing.
You can just walk up to someone and be like, "Hey, I've got a Cubelet. You want to play?" And just get that. This is a funeral, and I don't know you.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a great like packaged Magic the Gathering experience.
I actually have 2 Cubelets built right now. One of them is the one that we just highlighted. I actually, as an experiment, went to build a very low power Cubelet, which is almost exclusively made up. You might remember me telling you about this when I was first building this. It's almost exclusively made out of commons and uncommons from M11. Just because that's kind of what I had laying around, but it's what I like to call a core set cube. So it's very much on the core set power level of like attacking and blocking and combat tricks. I think Titanic Growth is in that one, but it's like Goblin Pikers and Silvermane Lions and like Azure Drakes, that kind of stuff. And I think the top end like goes up to Colossal Dreadmaw is like your top end 6-drop that you can play. And whenever my girlfriend and I sit down and play Magic, it's almost always that Cubelet, just because it's just so easy just to sit down and play. I enjoy going back in time and enjoying kind of that core set experience, and it's just so convenient for the both of us for it to kind of be that lower complexity, lower investment type of gameplay. So Cubelet is perfect for that.
I agree. Quicker, just kind of prepackaged, and like you can adjust the complexity level for someone who is not super experienced with Magic.
Yeah, for sure. And there's a wide range of power levels. We keep talking about it, but now we'll actually talk about it. You could build this any way you want. You could pick 100 cards of whatever you wanted without lands, and it could be whatever experience you want. I kind of think of mine as being like a legacy cube level, of a collection of cards. But there's no reason why you couldn't, put power in this and have it actually be like a vintage cube experience. I don't know exactly what that would look like, but you could do it.
Your cube doesn't have any Cubelet doesn't have any planeswalkers in it either. You could throw Jace the Mind Sculptor and Garruk Wildspeaker and Chandra Torch of Defiance in there and see how it works.
Yeah. I think you would have to kind of balance it to where,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
That would take a little bit of balancing, but you definitely could do it. You could make a Pauper Cubelet, version of this, where it's like all the top hits of like, everyone's Pauper Cubelet. People do set cubes all the time, which are finicky, and Cubelet would kind of be the same way, but you could make a Cubelet that just focuses on like the highlights of Kaldheim Limited. So it's just so you just get that limited gameplay as you're playing Kaldheim. Foretell would be a little weird, but maybe think like Theros Beyond Death or something like that, or Ikoria. You could build something like that. Like you were saying earlier, you could build a Cascade Cubelet that focused on Cascade cards, and that would be a very weird experience, but it sounds like it'd be fun for a couple of games. You could build something like that if you want. You could build a one-color Cubelet if you really wanted to. It's like it's the red deck wins Cubelet, and the whole idea is just to be more aggressive than your opponent. Like there's all sorts of ways that you could go with this.
Yeah, your Cubelet can be 20 copies of each Zubera. No one can stop you.
Ooh, I actually like that. I don't. I would want to play it once. I'll say
I
I'll
would.
say that, but you could do that. Yes.
Yeah. So now we're going to get into just sort of some considerations when you're building your kubelet and playing your kubelet about like rules you can implement and ways you can build it. So our first question here is: should you share a graveyard? And this actually like is pretty important to any kubelet because a lot of iconic Magic cards really do use the graveyard.
Hmm.
Flashback things like Eternal Witness, which is in your kubelet. I like Lingering Souls, and the question of should you share a graveyard basically boils down to like, or does each player have their own graveyard with the cards that they've sent there, or does each player do just share a graveyard? And you can flash back the Lingering Souls your opponent cast last turn, and you can Eternal Witness for a card that they used.
Yeah. That's a very interesting question that you have to answer before you sit down for a game of Cubelet, and I wish I just had the answer. Just as a spoiler, I prefer to play with each player having their own graveyard, but
Yeah,
you do not have to play that way. I think especially for like higher level or higher power level, or cubelets that want to like bend the rules and have like little sub games. If you're into that kind of thing, you can play with a shared graveyard. But I think that would kind of need a cubelet that's designed to work around that. While I've kind of tailored mine to work best with separate graveyards. How would you prefer to play, Frederick?
I think I prefer playing with separate graveyards, but you can build it either way. You just need to be conscious of the way it's going to interact with your cards. Eternal Witness gets a lot better. Flashback gets a lot worse.
Hmm. Yeah.
Just be conscious of that when you're deciding if you should share a graveyard.
Right.
Um,
There's a lot of people who like those sub games though, where it's like
yeah,
it's another opportunity to outplay your opponent. So I would say it's totally valid to have stuff like that. You have to decide that that's the experience that you're looking for. If you want the kind of Cubelet experience to more focus on just the core fundamentals of Magic, it's like it really is just like you're playing a normal game of Magic against your opponent, it's just focusing on those fundamentals. It is best to have the separate graveyard. That way, your graveyard effects are just going to kind of work normally instead of being a weird sub game. But I would actually love to see somebody build a cubelet that focuses on the graveyard being like a sub game that kind of having to get on the next level above your opponent and having gameplay come from that.
I agree. I think if it's that is a sub game you can pursue. I would say it's difficult to make it work, and it's especially going to be unintuitive for your players. But that is something you can do.
Yeah,
Um,
that's for the
next,
like that's for like the high level, like I
yeah,
have super big brain Magic players. I much more prefer just the normal gameplay of a separate graveyards. But close to that question is also the option of scry. Do you want to put scry cards in your cubelet? And this is a question I've kind of wrestled with the entire time I've had
mhm.
my cubelet. So just off the cuff, how do you feel about this, Frederick?
Oh, I love them. I think they're really interesting in the way that they play. Unless you're about to immediately draw cards, scrying basically becomes fate sealing. Unless you're scrying really deep, and then you want to alternate good card, bad card, good card, bad card, and then hope that your opponent doesn't have a way to draw multiple cards on their turn. A good card to look at would be Omen Speaker. You look at the top two. If one of them's good, one of them's bad, you put the bad one on top and then the good one. If they're both bad, you leave a bad one on top and put another bad one on the bottom, or leave them both on top if you think your opponent's gonna. There's a lot of mind games with Scry 2. Scry 1, not so much. You're basically just deciding, am I okay with my opponent drawing this card for a turn? But like Omen Speaker, I think should be a staple Cubelet card because of the interesting mind games it creates.
Yeah. Again, this for me, this is very close to the do you want to share a graveyard? It adds another sub game, which is fun for some players. I have had scry cards in my cubelet before, and it very much plays. It very much is a mind game with the scries, especially since there are no blank cards. Your opponent will always draw a playable card that's worth a card. Depending on the cubelet. With mine, all the cards are good cards, so you can't just give your opponent like a land that does nothing. So that kind of mitigates that a little bit. But like I said with the graveyards, having scry cards adds a sub game that I feel detracts from the core like gameplay of Magic the Gathering, which is why I've chosen not to have scry in my cubelet. Yeah, I used to have, I don't remember the name of it. It's a Sphinx from the original Theros block, but some people might remember what this is. When it attacks, you scry 3. And that was very much like if you get it, you want to play it, because getting that scry all the time is just, it just kind of really puts you so far ahead because you're always choosing what your opponent drew. That was fun for a little bit, but I eventually decided that it was detracting. Like we said before, you might want to build a cube where this mini game exists. It sounds like this type of mini game is really in your wheelhouse where you would want to play. I kind of shy away from that. That's why my cubelet has cards like Preordain, where it's I think Preordain might be the only scry card that's still in there. Like Ponder, Ponder's not in here because it shuffles the deck. But I'm shying away from scry, but you could absolutely build a cubelet that kind of focuses on having scry as a core component of what like blue does, and have that be a part of the cubelet experience.
Yeah. I think you should revisit scry. I think it can be really interesting. Okay. If I build a cubelet, it would definitely have quite a few scry cards, but I understand not every player might love it. But I think it has an important place in there. But next is possibly the most important question: what power level should you shoot for? Are you going to be including power 9? Are you going to be doing commons from core sets? I think the important thing is that you don't put power 9 alongside commons from core sets. But what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, as we said before, you can have any power level that you want, and all of them would have their own strengths and weaknesses. But I would say, much like a cube, as this is named after, all of the cards need to be similar in power level. Like you said, you can't put Ancestral Recall next to, just draft commons from the latest set. Because since it's a shared deck and you are drawing card after card, every card needs to be on the same power level for it to be a fun and balanced gameplay experience. You don't want a situation where you're drawing pieces of power and your opponent is only drawing like random bears. That's not fun. Cubelet should kind of it has the ability to take away that function of Magic where sometimes you have non-games. And that can kind of happen in Cubelet, but it happens a lot less often because because one, you're always drawing gas, and two, all your cards are on a similar power level. So any power level you want, as long as you're consistent with that type of card inside the Cubelet.
Yeah, I think I pretty much agree with that assessment. Whatever power level you find the most fun. Although I think introducing Power 9 can create non-games because the person who sees Ancestral Recall and the person who doesn't are on a widely different playing field. But, then that person could later draw into Upheaval or something. So there's no real way of knowing.
Yeah, I was thinking that this would be a lot harder to make with power. Like, it's easy with commons and uncommons from a core set. Balancing a very high power cube does sound like it would be much more difficult just because there's much higher swings in the power level. But I bet someone could do it, and I would love to play it if someone pulled it off.
Yeah.
All right. So this is something that you wanted to. Oh no, we're going to balancing colors. Okay. Yeah. Does balancing colors matter? Your lands are going to tap for every color. I mentioned that it's totally possible for you to build a single color cube if you wanted to. So, balancing colors. Do we want to balance the colors in our cubelet? I would go ahead and say that I do think it's a better experience if you do. How do you feel about this, Frederick?
I think I disagree. I've played the mono green cube. I thought it was really fun. I liked it a lot. And that's not to say that your cubelet should also be monocolored, but you're removing yourself from the constraints of Magic the Gathering's color pie with the cubelet. which I mean, I don't dislike the color pie, but it's one way to play the game. And I think you should really lean into that. That's not to say like disinclude a color you don't like as much, but like if there's 28 white cards you like and only like 17 blue cards, then just do that. Or like, you and I have been playing competitive Magic for a while. We know there's only about 4 good white cards. So like those are the only white cards that need to be in your cubelet. You don't need to put in more. There's no real reason to color balance. You can go ham on the multicolored cards, just knowing that they're easier to cast, and just include a few monocolor cards. There's really no reason to balance the colors as long as you're getting all the different effects Magic can do, or all the different effects that are fun that Magic can do within your cubelet.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I totally agree with you on that. When I would my main cubelet is reasonably balanced between the colors, just because I want it to be a showcase of everything that Magic can do, and it does focus on older cards, which are kind of staples of that color. If you're doing something a little different, maybe you're trying to get a certain experience, you absolutely have the ability to play around with color balance. I just like it to be symmetrical. I'm that kind of person where it's like I will just kind of really obsess over making sure that everything is symmetrical and that every color is represented. But that's just me. So I definitely agree with you that it should be less of a concern than all the other things we're talking about here.
Yeah, there are no areas of my life in which I'm obsessed with symmetry. I definitely don't painstakingly take one egg out of each side of the carton and eat more or less eggs than I intended to make sure that the formation of eggs in the carton is symmetrical. That would be a super weird thing, and I don't do that.
Oh, okay. Thanks for putting that on the record on your podcast. But yeah, let's move on to tutors and shuffling. Should you have tutors in your deck? Should you have cards that shuffle your deck? And I just wanted to mention this because I'm actually very against tutors and deck shuffling in Cubelet. It just ruins the experience. It just takes time for no apparent reason. And if you're playing with somebody new, they're not going to know what cards are in the Cubelet. They're not going to know what to search for. It's just a cleaner, quicker experience without these things. And honestly, if you're building your Cubelet correctly, you probably shouldn't need this kind of stuff in there. Do you feel differently, Frederick?
Yeah, well, I think I agree with you for like new players, but if you're playing a cubelet you've been playing for a while and you're generally playing it with the same person over and over, it can be really cool to add something like Mnemonic Tutor. I think getting exactly the card you need is worth probably 2 mana, maybe 3. Maybe put the 3 mana tutor in there. And like it just adds an extra dimension. Like, I played with this card last time and it was really fun. So now if I get Demonic Tutor, I get to play with it again because I get to grab it, unless it's in my opponent's hand.
Yeah, that's a great point. I do like that. I just do not want to shuffle the deck during gameplay. I think that really slows down the pace of gameplay. Is not conducive to the type of like just sit down, quick game. We're just battling it out between rounds. I think it kind of goes against that, and just shuffling a 100-card deck just isn't fun. It's one of the least fun things in Magic for me. So I actually feel pretty adamant that I do not want this stuff in my cubelet. But I totally understand if you or someone else wants to add that as an extra kind of layer of complexity. So that's just my thought on that.
Okay, no, that's totally fair. I think I'm with you until 2 people are super into the cubelet together and like have kind of memorized the list, and then I think it becomes worth it.
Yeah, you're a bit big brained, more big brained than I am. So I don't blame you for having that opinion. But okay, so we're finally here. This is something that you wanted to talk about, and is not something that I have actually spent all that time thinking about. So you wanted to talk about spell count in Cubelet. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, how many how many instant speed spells, I maybe did not title this correctly, how many instant speed spells go in the cube? Instant speed sort of snowballs in power in terms of how many copies or how many different instant speed cards are in a cube or in a deck. Obviously, like if you have a flash creature and a counter spell, you're not cutting off your ability to play a creature if you wait to play the counter spell. So in order for this to be successful in cube, or in Cubelet, you need a critical mass of instant speed spells. Otherwise, every time that you're passing to hold up a counter spell, you risk your opponent not playing something worth countering, and then you not having to do anything meaningful to do with your mana. And I think your Cubelet does a good job of this because it does include like half of the charms from Ravnica, which are all instants that can at least do something without reacting to your opponent. They can at least do something like at the end of your opponent's turn if they didn't play anything worth interacting with, and then that plays well with the counter spells. But I think it's something people need to be conscious of when they're building a Cubelet. Either no counter spells or counter spells and plenty of other good instant speed cards so that if you're stuck holding up a counter spell, you're not just giving up your turn if your opponent doesn't play something worth countering.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I'm sure that you agree with this, but I am going to say it. There should be part of the downside of playing counter spells is that sometimes your opponent just isn't going to play anything that's worth countering. Like that kind of does need to be within the game to be a bit of a foil to having a deck or a hand filled with instant speed stuff. Sometimes you need to be punished for not committing anything to the board. You're right. I do think that the balance of spells in my Cubelet in particular is good for this, but yeah, it would definitely, if you want to play high powered spells, you do need to also have the ability to basically commit a lot of stuff to the board and be able to overwhelm that player who's able to kind of just get all the good instants and sorceries. So yeah, it's a good balance. It's something to think about when you're building your cube, and it's not really something I had thought about before.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a lot of considerations for building playing. I hope we didn't push anybody off of actually trying Cubelet. I'd like to reiterate, this is a really fun way to play, and no matter how you do it, you're most likely going to have a good time, no matter how you go on any of these considerations. But to kind of cap off our discussion, we wanted to do a little mini list of each of our favorite Cubelet cards. All of mine are in my cube, which I highlighted here. I think you have a few that aren't actually in this one that might.
Yeah, I think a couple of mine are in Will's Cubelet as well, but
yeah, for sure. And I'm going to go ahead and start off with mine. And you mentioned, and mine are not in any order. Frederick's might be. Yeah, but you mentioned that there are Return to Ravnica charms in my Cubelet. There's quite a few, not all of them, like Rakdos Charm doesn't really do anything, but I really wanted to highlight Civic Charm. This is a card that kind of just does everything you need to in a Cubelet that focuses on core Magic gameplay. So Civic Charm is it's 2 mana, a green-blue, instant, uncommon from, I believe, Gatecrash. Choose one. Target creature gets +3/+3 until end of turn, so you kind of get an expensive, giant growth. Or permanents you control gain hexproof until end of turn, so you can blank removal or anything like that. Or return target creature to its owner's hand. Man, this card kind of just does everything you need to, and I think that having that modality, that flexibility, really lends itself to the Cubelet experience.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is a great example of a card that really makes you think in Cubelet. And I think any charm or command is the same way. But I think Civic Charm is one of the good ones because it really does. It does 3 different things.
Yeah, for sure. Izzet Charm also does a lot of good work, for those that are familiar with that. Orzhov Charm is another one that is, lower. It didn't see as much play as the others in its current standard, but its abilities work really well for the Cubelet format.
Yeah, Azorius can put a permanent on top of its owner's deck, which means you can take one of your opponent's things they've played and you get to draw it next turn.
Yes, that is one sub game that I wanted to kind of keep in. It's incongruent with the rest of the things I've said about the Cubelet, but I just want that one thing that kind of hints at the possibility of what Cubelet could do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Civic Charm, does a lot of good work. What is your card that you want to talk about?
So my first one is Eternal Witness. A lot better if you're sharing your graveyard, but still very good if you're not. Just a staple Magic card, 3 mana, 2/1. When it comes in, you return target card from your graveyard to your hand. Very simple, very elegant, very good. And I think it deserves a place in pretty much every Cubelet.
Yeah, Cubelet is the perfect format to highlight cards like this that everyone knows is good, and shows how good it is in, constructed formats and cubes. And like Cubelet is kind of the perfect way. Like you don't have to build an Eternal Witness deck in Modern to be able to play Eternal Witness. You can just slide one of them into your 100 card Cubelet, and all of a sudden you get to play with the full power of Eternal Witness. I love the Cubelet's ability to like let me play with powerful cards and my favorite cards and play them in a low stakes format. So, Cubelet is a perfect way to kind of get the thrill of how good Eternal Witness is. This is a good pick.
Yeah. So next you've got.
Yes. So this is a card that's very near and dear to my heart. I played this a lot in its standard format, and that's Invisible Stalker. So some of you, people who are playing an original Innistrad will recognize this card immediately. It's a lot more powerful than it looks. It's a 2-mana creature, 1 generic and then 1 blue for a 1/1 creature human rogue. It has hexproof and unblockable. So once this is on the field, it's going to be really hard to deal with. Now it is just a 1/1, but back in standard you would put like Runechanter's Pike on this, or you would in the limited format it would be like Silver Inlaid Dagger or Butcher's Cleaver, one of those two, and really hit face. And I wanted to get something like that into my Cubelet. So another card that it's not on this list, but another card that's near and dear to my heart is Armadillo Cloak, and I'm using the kind of functional reprint that came out in Dragon's Maze, Unflinching Courage, which gives +2/+2 and then lifelink. So one of the more powerful things you can do in my Cubelet is to put Unflinching Courage on the Invisible Stalker, and that is a really hard combo to beat. You can do it because there are sacrifice effects. I made sure that like Diabolic Edict is in here, so you can get around that. But if your opponent gets it, you're just gonna have to either draw one of those or try to race it. That's fun gameplay for me. How do you feel about Invisible Stalker?
I agree. I think it highlights sort of the one of the cool things about Cubelet, which is like in standard, if you wanted to slap Armadillo Cloak on an Invisible Stalker, you'd have to play Bant. You have to play 3 different colors just to do that synergy. But in Cubelet, you don't. You can have a good Rakdos aura on this and a good Selesnya aura on it. Just have all 5 colors on your Voltron. I think Invisible Stalker is definitely one of the more powerful cards in the Cubelet. Given that there's, I think, a couple of auras, you got Rancor, stuff like that.
Oh, yeah, Rancor's in there.
Yeah, and you can get around the Edict just by keeping your cheap creatures and not putting them face down as lands. So it's definitely a powerhouse in the Cubelet, but I think it's earned its place for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So what is your next card?
My next card is Scoos.
Oh, Scoos. The Scoos is loose.
The Scoos is loose. All of your cards can be lands, and all of your lands can tap for green. Mm-hmm. So this activated ability is very easy to do with your extra lands you have lying around, and it just stops your opponent from using Eternal Witness, from flashing anything back, and it lets the Scoos keep getting bigger and gaining you life. And yeah, I mean, what more could you want? It's a very good 2-drop.
This is a very good card, and I've played with this card in Cubelet before. I do think that I've taken it out of my cube. I do feel that all of your lands tapping for green makes this a little too powerful. When this was in my Cubelet, it was one of the most powerful things that you can draw. It was on the power level of Thragtusk and Siege Gang Commander. But it's a very good card. It plays very interestingly with in the Cubelet format, and I'm not surprised at all that this is one of your favorite Cubelet cards. This is very much a Fred card.
Yeah, I mean, all of the things I've picked are Fred cards. You said Siege. That made me think of Siege Rhino. Why isn't Siege Rhino in the Cubelet?
It very much could be. I mean, and that's another part of it. We didn't talk about this, but it's a very tightly designed experience. There's tons of Cubelet cards I'd want to put in the Cubelet, but there's just no room. It's like, what do you take out? I like all the cards that are in there. That's totally a card that could fit into Cubelet in the future. Thank you for the idea. But yeah, totally not surprised that you picked Scoos.
Yeah, it's my picks are very transparently mine. But you've got this next one. This one's quite interesting.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So I'm picking Stab Wound as my last card. And the idea here is I want to highlight Stab Wound is a very interesting card. It's kind of on, it's like, it was a high pick in its draft environment, but Stab Wound didn't really see play. I think maybe it saw maybe a tiny bit of standard play, but Stab Wound is its limited level removal. But it's such a cool card that I think Cubelet is the perfect place to highlight these cards that are playable and have cool, interesting effects, but just aren't on the power level in a normal constructed format. You can create a format where Stab Wound is a good card, and I think that I've done that here in this Cubelet. So, Stab Wound, it is enchantment aura, 3 mana, 2 generic, and 1 black. Enchanted creature gets -2/-2. And then at the beginning of the upkeep of enchanted creature's controller, that player loses 2 life. So you could use it as removal, it's -2/-2. You could shrink down a smaller creature, and then that creature will hurt their opponent over and over again. If you put this on a wall, man, that's you get a stew going there. There's a lot of interesting gameplay, and I think Cubelet is the perfect place to highlight cards like this.
Yeah, I think my favorite format to play Stab Wound in is the Waffle House parking lot after F&M.
Yeah, that's I think that's a great place to do that. Yeah, please continue doing that, Frederick. I think that'd be very great for your future. But you have
Insult to Bear Tribal, you're leaking, bucko.
You have one more card that you want to talk about, and talk about Frederick cards. This is a big one. Tell us about Primal Command.
Yeah, this is just my favorite card in Magic, but I think it plays really interestingly with Cubelet. So it's 3 and double green for a command sorcery, so choose 2. Target player gains 7 life, or put target non-creature permanent on top of its owner's library, or target player shuffles his or her graveyard into his or her library, or search your library for a creature card, reveal it, and put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. So you get to choose 2 of those things. It does tutor for a creature, which I know you said you don't like tutors in your Cubelet personally, but I do, and I think especially at this level, it's probably fine. Gaining 7 life can, give you a couple more turns to try to get out of a jam, which, is less relevant and constructed when decks are so tightly built. But in Cubelet, which feels like limited, you really could draw something that gets you out of a jam in the turns that 7 life buys you. Yeah. Put a non-creature permanent on top of its owner's library. You basically, worst case scenario, you just get rid of one of your opponent's lands. But if there's an equipment or an aura or something you don't want to deal with, that goes right on top of their library. And then you can shuffle their graveyard or your graveyard back into the Cubelet, which will not only shuffle in whatever you put on top, so it's kind of gone, but also, if there are good cards in your opponent's graveyard and you don't want them to recur them and you want a chance to draw them, shuffle them back in, and then, grab a creature or whatever. So there's just so many different modes that this card really, tests you.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. This is a U card for sure. And yeah, it does a great job of highlighting all the stuff we talked about in considerations. All the stuff that I kind of shy away from, but you think is good, is actually done in this card. So yeah, you're right. This has a lot more Cubelet consideration points than I thought it would. Yeah, so this is a perfect, even though this is just your favorite card, this is still a great pick for Cubelet. Yeah. And I noticed that you picked 3 green cards.
I didn't notice that. See, the last one was going to be Siege Rhino, but then I was like, we'll probably talk about that in the power level section, but then I forgot to.
Right. This is probably the best time for me to tell one of the most interesting Cubelet cards that I've come across and used to be in my Cubelet. You mentioned that with Primal Command, you can make your opponent put a land onto the top of the deck. And then that begs the question, it's like, which land do you pick? Because they all have different considerations.
Yeah.
There is a card I used to have in my Cubelet called the Prive. And it's basically Counterspell. It's an uncommon from Rise of the Eldrazi. But the additional cost is that you have to return a land from your battlefield to your hand. And I thought that was an interesting sub-game. It turns out that was actually a little too interesting, because then you have to ask the question. It's like, can you look at your lands? Do you want your opponent to sit there and have to look at the 5 lands that they have up on the battlefield and figure out what would be best. That is a very interesting sub game for those that are willing to play it.
I think you should.
I know you would want that for sure. I kind of want to shy away from that, but that is the type of card that really kind of breaks the format, or not breaks the format in the way that we normally mean that. It kind of bends the rules of Cubelet to the point where, like you have to think about how your cards interact with the rules of Cubelet. But yeah, Deprive, if you love the sub games, Deprive is definitely a card you should be looking at. And Primal Command kind of does that same thing where you need to kind of like know what lands you're working with and decide beforehand, can you look at face down lands. But yeah, this is a very interesting card.
Yeah. So speaking of very interesting cards, the bonus segment from last week was a hit with the two of us, and I hope some listeners. Hopefully, we'll get some feedback on that soon. So we're gonna be rotating the bonus segment soon, but we're gonna do the same bonus segment again. Will, do you want to explain this bonus segment?
Right. Just to wrap up, Cubelet, we love Cubelet. It's a lot of fun. There's all sorts of ways that you could do it. Check out the links that we'll have in the description, for the stuff that we talked about. And, if the next time you get together with people, just try Cubelet. It's a lot of fun. Even if you just wanted it to be a random pile of 100, just to, whatever cards are laying around, it would be fun. Just try it out and see if this is something that you want to do. We've come to love this format, and I think that you will too once you try it.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's, for some reason I thought we were gonna do that after the bonus segment. It doesn't make any fucking sense. You're right.
It's all okay. That being said, yes, we're doing the bonus segment. We wanted to run it back. We had so much fun talking about random cards from Scryfall that we wanted to do it again. So let's just jump right into it. Let's go ahead and give our gut shot on what we think about these, I'm sure, very lauded and powerful Magic cards.
All right, are you gonna read the first card or should I?
I'll read the first card. Yeah. Oh, Jesus Christ. All right. Okay. So we have the classic Magic card Swamp here. Basic land Swamp. You know it. You love it. It taps for 1 black. I actually don't know what set this is. Is this one of the Commander decks?
Yeah, this is one of the This is the year that they were all tribal. And this is a Mark Pool Swamp with a little question mark frond sticking out of it and a shooting star in the background. This is pretty. It's unfortunate that it's not full art, but it's a pretty swamp.
I can appreciate just the classic like non-full art basic lands. I can still get behind those. I will say that swamp is probably super high in the basic land power rankings, just actual lands, because black is the color that has the most cards that care whether you have actual swamps.
That's true.
Yeah, like Cabal Coffers or something like that. So, if you're playing a colors, black is the one that wants you to have the most of that type of basic land intrinsically within its card. So swamp, pretty good.
All right, I will read the next one to give you a break. Sentinel Totem is an artifact for 1. It's an uncommon from Ixalan, and when Sentinel Totem enters the battlefield, scry 1. Tap, exile Sentinel Totem, exile all cards from all graveyards. So this is a genre of card we see like every set, Scrabbling Claws, Grafdigger's Cage, Relic of Progenitus, just graveyard hate. Maybe Grafdigger's Cage doesn't fit in there so well, but a card that can exile all the cards from all graveyards. Just shut off anything graveyard your opponent's doing, maybe do something extra on the side, in this case, scry 1. How do you feel about Sentinel Totem?
Yeah, this may be one of the first cards that was kind of meant to be clearly we're trying to get as close to Relic Progenitus as possible without actually reaching that power level. This may have been one of the few of that type of card, and we've seen that over and over again since Ixalan with things like the Lantern. What's the Lantern from Theros Beyond Death? That one that sees a lot of play.
I don't know. We actually cleaned up with that at pre-release, though.
Oh yeah. There's one from Theros. There's one from Theros that does something similar. I think that all of these cards have really just proven that Relic of Progenitus is still the top tier, and that's kind of if you want a 1-mana artifact that deals with the graveyard, that really is what you want. Sentinel Totem didn't really get there. We've seen better ones since then, but I gotta be honest. If my opponent played one of these, that scary looking face on that totem, I'd be pretty skeeved out. out. I think that I would definitely kind of knock me off my game a little bit.
Yeah, they look like it looks like the little worm that goes in the back of the Bionicles. Uh, Rockshi. That's embarrassing that I know that.
Ah, it's staring into my soul.
Yeah. Next card.
Yes,
That
next
won't
card.
stare into your soul, I hope.
Oh yeah, classic character from MTG that finally came back for M21. This is Baron Talarian Archmage. I bet tons of people were excited for this guy to come back. 3 mana, 1 generic, and 2 blue, legendary creature, human wizard. It's a 2/2. When this card enters the battlefield, return up to 1 other target creature or planeswalker to its owner's hand. So it's already Mana War. Aether Adept right on the top. And hits planeswalkers, so it's even a little bit better than that. At the beginning of your end step, if a permanent was put into your hand from the battlefield this turn, draw a card. So this is basically like Mana War Tribal Commander, right?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I was thinking of it as just bouncing things that have good enters the battlefield effects, but I guess that makes a lot more sense. That's pretty good.
Yeah,
Bouncing around permanents to draw cards.
That's definitely why. Well, it's legendary because it's Baron, but also like they clearly wanted this. This is clearly meant to be if you wanted a mono blue deck that was all just Aether Adepts, Mana Wars, that this could fit into there, while also just being a good card for you to play in like a blue tempo control deck because it is just a souped up Aether Adept. So yeah, this is a great card. Great well-known character. I think this card's just a home run.
Yeah, I think I agree. I don't have as much nostalgia for the character because I got into Magic around Scars of Mirrodin.
Sure.
But I understand this was a soy face moment for a lot of players.
I do see
you're reading
this,
the next one?
I do see this all the time on Arena. So this is a playable card on Arena. So keep an eye out for it. You'll see it. How about you read the next one?
Oh yeah, sorry. So this is Sorceress Spyglass. This is the pre-release promo from Eldraine. It's 2 mana artifact as rare. As Sorceress Spyglass enters the battlefield, look at an opponent's hand, then choose any card name. Activated abilities of sorcerers with the chosen name can't be activated unless they're mana abilities. So this is 1 more mana on a Pithing Needle, but you get to look at your opponent's hand. So not as awful to play before the game has gotten going and what your opponent's playing. The idea was you named planeswalkers with this. This named Menia Oko before it was banned. Before Oko was banned. This got banned in Brawl on Arena just because, they don't want you to basically blank any planeswalker deck you're playing against, which is understandable, but also just play artifact removal. I don't know.
It's insane that Fires of Invention still gets to exist in Brawl, but apparently this is beyond the pale.
It's obviously strong. You should put it in most decks, because your opponent's commander might be a planeswalker. In fact, probably will. But ban worthy, I guess it creates too many bad feelings for the Bronzos.
Let's hate the bronze players are all right. Okay, they're good in my book.
Okay, for the Brawl players.
Okay, because I'm included there. Yeah.
Okay. But I think it's a very elegant design. It's sort of the natural conclusion of Pithing Needle type designs. The 1 mana is more important, so this doesn't really see play in Modern. Just because, you'd rather be able to, what your opponent's playing from the first land they drop in Modern, and you'd rather be playing your Disruption on turn 1.
This was the culmination of everyone just screaming at Wizards that Pithing Needle needed to be evergreen in Standard, and they decided to make a little powered down Pithing Needle that would be appropriate for the Standard power level, and we could see that they planned on this actually being evergreen. It came out in Ixalan and was themed to be like a kind of a pirates like Spyglass, and then here it's a little, since this is the Eldraine version, it's a little weird, but we'll most likely see this card again down the road, probably in the next set or two. That way it's still in Standard when Eldraine rotates out. So be on the lookout for another reprint of this card very soon.
Yeah. I would not be surprised, or they'll just give us Pithing Needle back for the hype.
That would actually be pretty good. And I think that they could format, or they could they could power the format to accommodate that.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, let's move on to Clockwork Servant. This is a card that's actually, speaking of brawl, this is an interesting kind of monocolor brawl card. Clockwork Servant is an artifact creature, 3 generic mana. It's a 2/3 artifact creature gnome and has adamant. When it enters the battlefield, if at least 3 mana of the same color was spent to cast it, draw a card. Yeah, so you'll often see this in monocolor brawl decks as just a card that will, it's a 2/3 that comes into play in cycles just because they can. I never liked the card. Imri is probably the deck, the artifact, the artifact Imri deck is probably the deck that makes the most use of this card. But I've seen this in mono red brawl decks like Perforos, and I actually kind of hate it and always take it out. I don't find this card actually strong enough to be a brawl playable card.
I don't know anything about this card in Brawl, but I know in Eldraine Limited it's very good. You know, a lot of times you're going to be really happy to be in the Adamant deck because you're going to get a few cards that are just way above curve, and this is one of them. And I think it's a really elegant design because it doesn't demand a specific color devotion. You just need 3 devotion to a color. So, you know, it kind of gets nabbed up faster than like if it costed triple blue or something, you know, it'd probably be circling the drain because what are the odds that not only you're playing a devotion deck, but that devotion deck of the 5? So it's cool that we have this in that limited format. I think it's an elegant design, and it'd be nice if it came back for the next set where devotion mattered or where we get adamant.
Do you think that this was originally a stuffy doll kind of successor based on the art?
Oh, and they like repurposed the art because they decided they didn't want to do that?
Yeah. Do you think this might have been a stuffy doll?
Maybe, and then it made its way into M21 in the form of that goblin that's like, fuck you.
Yeah, which by the way, yes, which by the way should be a white card.
Okay, white red maybe.
No, I think fight would be awkward in white, but I think the overall design, stuffy doll should be a white effect. But anyway, yeah, Clockwork Servant, not good for brawl, good for limited. Keep that in mind the next time you do a flashback Eldraine card draft. But let's move on to our next card, and I believe you'll read this one.
Yeah, so this is Turret Ogre, 3 and a red for a 4/3 Ogre Warrior, common from War of the Spark, with Reach. When Turret Ogre enters the battlefield, if you control another creature with power 4 or greater, Turret Ogre deals 2 damage to each opponent. Getting that each in for 2-headed giant.
Oh yeah. Dude, those birds are about to have a bad time.
Yeah, those zombie birds are regular. Those are eternal, right?
Yeah.
Those eternalized birds are about to get murked, which is interesting because Turret Ogre can't hit creatures. I think it would be a much better card if it could. But you still don't feel awful to have these in your limited deck. I think that's obviously where it sees play. You're not. This is not good enough for standard. But yeah, it is. It's a decent card. 4 mana, 4/3s. You don't feel awful about playing in limited, and then it has a chance to do 2 to your opponent.
All right, okay, so I need to talk about the flavor text here. Common Gruul career aspirations: Berserker, Shaman, Catapult. I think that there's probably a couple of different Gruul occupations that we could come up with. I'm thinking Snot Artist, right? Drawing the sigils on the stone with the snot. What other Gruul career aspirations would be possible?
Goop Barista.
Oh, nice. I'm gonna say I don't want my lawyer to come from Orzhov. I know that they aren't completely on the up and up. I'd much rather have a Goblin Berserker be my lawyer in the Azorius courts, right?
Yeah. To take these divorce papers, Karen.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, let's be honest. It's mostly going to be a Berserker, Shaman, or Catapult. But yeah,
we could have a Gruul stockbroker, not Gruul then divest.
Nice. I love that, man. If we could make that the episode title, I would be all for that.
I think that would be a little bit too specific to this one joke that we made at the end.
I know. I'm all for it. But I guess speaking on that, I think that's all the cards that we have for today, and I think that's going to be the end of our program. Yeah. Again, Cubelet, it's good. You should play it.
Yeah, I agree. It is good, and you should play it. You should build one because you're in quarantine. What else are you gonna do? It's super easy. You can put one together with the cards you already own. Don't order any cards. Cards restriction.
Cards are bad. Don't buy cards.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway,
you can buy cards from our sponsor, Blackwater.
Oh God. Okay, I'm not even going to try that. Anyway, okay. How about we button this one up, man?
Yeah. Outro.
Outro commence. Thank you for listening to this episode of Gutshot. It really means the world to us that you check us out episode per episode. If you want, you can follow me at Agra Rhetoric on Twitter. Frederick is at War Crimes Uwu on Twitch or at FredSB on Twitter. If you're watching this on YouTube, again, we would love it if you would like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell icon if that vibes with you. And if you want, you can follow the show on Twitter at Gutshot Pod.
Yeah, that's all the time we've got for the day. This has been Gutshot, the only podcast your mom listens to that's not about serial killers eating people's toes. And we hope you will tune in again next week when we talk about Magic the Gathering again.
Later.